nice scent.
Are you sure it's not the chai tea?
Sure.
We are live.
Live.
Let's wait and see if anybody joins us. There are a few people looking forward to this conversation.
Is there? Yeah. I guess some of the people. Well, hopefully the person that asked the question.
The person that asked is at work, but she said she would do her best to listen in.
Okay.
And there are a couple other people who are struggling with this, so they are looking forward to it, they said. So if you're there, say hello. Let us know who you are. Say hi to us. And if you watch the replay, of course, let us know that you watch the replay too. It's nice so we can see how many people actually watch these things either after they're done or while we're talking. It's nice to see some interaction too while we're talking. So if you have any questions, any comments, any concerns, anything that comes up as we're talking, feel free to type it in the comments, and we will either address it or simply just read your comment if it's not a question or anything, as we're talking. Today we're going to talk about basically how to keep showing up for yourself when you don't have a ton of support from, hey Mindy, when you don't have a ton of support at home from your spouse, or a spouse refuses to join you on your journey, things like that. So we're going to kind of discuss, because actually before we get into that, I'll say, so as you all know, because we opened up the 6-week program last Monday, so a week ago yesterday. We have 16 spots remaining right now. And I have 3 or 4 people that I'm currently in conversations with who don't have all the information, so I'm not sure. But if you're at all curious, if you want information, if you, even can't do this one but still want to have the conversation because maybe you want to do one in the future, still reach out. As I said, we have 16 spots left. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And another 3 weeks before it closes. And then it starts orientation week May 15th and full program start May 22nd. So again, if you're there, say hello. Let us know who you are. So far, it shows where we have 4 people watching, and Mindy's the only person that said hello. And we're going to get started.
7.
Oh, there we go, 7 people.
Mm-hmm.
So say hello to us, please. And as we said, if you watch the replay, let us know you watch the replay. And if anything comes up as we're talking, that you want to comment on or that you want to ask the questions on, feel free to comment it in the comments and we will address it.
Yeah.
So this is going to be more like a discussion of you and I.
I think so, because you and I, when we first got together, I guess a little while after we got together, I did jump on the bandwagon with you and actually did have I actually had the same personal trainer as you. And yeah, we can get into it a little bit deeper, but somewhere the train went off the rails.
I don't even think only that, because when you and I got together, I was heavily into running, and you had nothing. You wanted nothing to do with any of it.
Yeah, I know, but I'm more focusing on like our current lifestyle.
Yeah, no, I get it. But what I'm saying is I was deep into running. I ate fairly healthy, and more or less we weren't on completely opposite pages, right. But in terms of movement, we were on completely opposite pages.
Right. So for people who watch this afterwards,
hey, Julie,
or what have you, maybe tell them what it is that we're going to be talking about.
Oh, so for anybody who's just joining, we're talking today about how to. I titled the video anyway. Yeah. Kind of how to navigate when spouses don't support you on your journey, or how to continue to show up for yourself when you don't have that support from your spouse, or they refuse to kind of sign on to the health and wellness thing. So, do you want to start? Or you want me to start?
No, I think it's just going to be a conversation that just unfolds as we go along.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I think there are some tips and stuff that I'd like. I'll start if you want. So
tips at the end.
No, this is how this is how I want to start the conversation.
See, this is why we're not on the same page.
Because. So for me personally, something that I've learned as I've gone through, and I've been in 2 relationships where I was heavily into fitness portion, not so much nutrition, but heavily into fitness portion, where I moved a lot. I loved to run. And, as I just said, when Kevin and I first got together, Kevin wasn't into any of that at all. And my
hockey. I was
previous relation, and my previous relationship, he wanted nothing to do with it either. So one of the things that I've learned is that, and I've learned this more specifically from Kevin, is that it has to be you exactly what you are after, exactly what you want, exactly what your goal is, exactly why you're doing it even needs to be communicated to your spouse. And I say that because for many, many years, I thought, why is he not getting it? Not necessarily Kevin, but why is he not getting it? Like, why are you doing this when you know I'm doing this? So why are you bringing home a chocolate bar when you know I'm like, if it's in the house, I'm going to eat it, as an example, because I've heard clients say that. Or why are you bringing me home a treat if you know that I'm going through this process and that I don't have that planned, or whatever the case might be. And sometimes, and I've heard those specific comments in the last couple of weeks specifically, and my advice is always to communicate exactly what you want, exactly what you need, your goal exactly, why you want that goal, and what you expect from your spouse through the journey. Because if you don't communicate that, I can say with 100% certainty, they do not read your mind. Not the way that we think they should.
Jeez, do you think a guy could read a husband or a significant other can read his spouse's mind in the first place?
Well, I can tell you right now from my own personal experience, and Kevin and I have had this issue with things around the house. For many years, I expected that Kevin should know that this is what I want done. That he should be able to just look at it and go, well, Melissa doesn't like this, so he should be able to read that this is what I want done.
Clueless.
And for many years, a man's thought process, I read a book about this once. A man's thought processes are the complete opposite train of ours. So we think in different ways than men think. So when they look at something,
because she read a book.
and when they look at something, they don't think of it in the same way we do. So if we don't communicate what we need, they literally, as maybe in our mind, as stupid as it is that they can't know this thing, they do not. I can tell you that with absolute certainty. So my first tip, or my first thing, now that I know, is to be very, very communicative with what you want, why you want it, what your goal is, why you're after this goal, what do you expect from your spouse through this journey. My other thing that, and I always say this to clients when we get into this topic, is that the journey has to be about you. So you can't expect, and this is something that I had to accept throughout my journey, because Kevin has always been a little bit behind me in when he's ready to show up, or when he's ready to do things. So I've had to accept that I can't change Kevin, and I can't control Kevin, and I can't expect that Kevin's going to do this because I did and at this time. What I can control is how I show up for myself, what I do and don't do for myself, what my goals are and why I'm doing them, and keep that in focus. And hopefully over time, and Kevin and I are a really good example of this, influence each other to make the healthier changes.
Yeah. Yeah, you went right from the beginning to the end there, all in one shot.
That's okay.
Yeah, so from my perspective of the journey, it's a little bit different than hers, and well, for obvious reasons, as she pointed out, halfway through, I was oblivious of, I guess. But realistically, to go back to what I was saying in the beginning of the video, was that, or conversation, or whatever, we kind of got on the path together, and then, not necessarily from a nutrition perspective, but from like a physical activity workout, I got in with your trainer and realized that I needed to do that. Did jump on, the nutritional bandwagon for a little bit, and then work changed shift, and I couldn't go to the gym at the same time as you, and that just turned into an excuse for me to fall off the wagon and just not bother. And that happened at a time where it was very important and very critical for you, because you were going through and competing, getting ready to compete, and all that kind of stuff. So where it got really difficult there was specifically around the nutrition, because when you were training for competing, you were very, very specific in what you couldn't eat, and that was difficult for me, because I was no longer disciplined as to what I couldn't eat. And it was very difficult in the aspect that if we ever decided to go for a date night, it was near impossible to go anywhere because you couldn't find anything to eat because you
Yeah,
didn't know
so
how the food was cooked, or whether it come with a sauce or didn't come with a sauce. And at that time, you really hadn't thought about, well, hey, you know what, I can just order it without. That didn't come till later. So there was a lot of aspects of um, the asymmetry between um, somebody who's going through the journey and somebody who isn't, and looking for that support. And I understand your point and your tip that you need to communicate everything to that person. And I know that even during those times, you just assumed that I would understand and know what it was that you were going through, that I wouldn't bring stuff in the house that you couldn't eat and things like that. But where somebody who isn't going through that journey is ignorant of that fact, or maybe even don't care, is, you know what? I still eat chocolate bars. I still eat chips. I still eat donuts. I still eat pizza and burgers and all that kind of stuff. I don't particularly care if you don't.
but I think that the important part of it is the lesson in that is number one, because don't forget we're talking to the women, and the majority of, I shouldn't say the majority of cases because I don't know really if this is true, but a lot of times it's a woman has gone on some sort of diet or doing some sort of thing to change her lifestyle or change how she looks on the outside, and the man is not doing it and doesn't want anything to do with it and doesn't care what she's doing, and maybe even supports what she's doing but doesn't want anything at all to do with it for themselves.
Right.
Which I think the point that you're trying to make, or at least what I'm gathering from what the point you're trying to make, is that when we go into things like when I was competing, I was in a very, very restrictive mindset. So when you go into a diet which is very restrictive and you go into those kind of goals where you have to have, you can't have this food, you can have this food, and don't do this and do that and yada yada, where everything is really cut and dry, there's no gray area, it's black or white.
Yeah.
You can't expect your spouse to follow on that because realistically, that's not, what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, it's not a lifestyle. So,
right, it's not a lifestyle, it's not a logical, it's not a goal that everybody has, right. Say, for instance, in my case, to compete. So for me to expect Kevin to do those things, when I sit back and look at it, or think about it and reflect on it, it made zero sense because that wasn't his goal. And even if he did decide to, which he did, I'm going to train more and I'm going to hire this trainer too and yada yada, he still wouldn't have been as, on the other end, strict as me because he wasn't competing. So we can't expect him to do exactly what we're doing. That doesn't mean that we can't expect some support though.
Exactly.
And I mean, this goes both ways.
But the thing of it is from a guy's perspective or significant other, because we can't just say guy, it's whoever this person is related to, their partner, and that's just it. If you have to set boundaries and you have to come to an agreement as to what's acceptable. So like you say, what's acceptable with what I would bring in the house, because you said, bringing chocolate bars and stuff like that into the house, where that's a trigger food for some people, and it needs to be discussed that, hey, I understand that's what you like, but, if they're working or whatever, eat that stuff out of the house kind of thing. And those are some ways that you can support that person is by, okay, fine, you're not interested in being part of that, but make sure that you don't bring that kind of food into the house if that really bothers or triggers that person. So that's one way of support. I know from past with some of your clients where the significant other didn't support because they were concerned of how much change that person would go through, and that person wouldn't be the same person anymore. And if you remember what I'm talking about, it was more along the physique.
No, I don't remember this, but that's okay.
Yeah, you had a client.
It doesn't matter, so we don't need to get into details of the
client. No, but what I'm saying is it has nothing to do with the client. What I'm saying is we're talking about being supportive and not supportive, or not getting on the bandwagon at all, and people struggling with not having the support that they're after. And one of the aspects was your significant other might be afraid of what could happen if you change. You get thin or whatever, you get more attractive, and you might not you might completely change as a person.
I think that everybody changes as a person through their journey, mindset wise, more than anything else. I mean, the growth happens, and the growth happens almost internally while the external changes. And I think that the growth, I can understand what you're saying. I don't remember this case, but I can understand what you're saying in that, everybody gets edgy because now this person is trying to change. And if they change where there's a focus on also changing as a person, not just on the outside, there are things that both parties can start to be scared of because now their individual persona, how they present themselves, their confidence, all of those things changes and grows. And then you can kind of get a little bit scared about, well, what does this, the spouse can get a little bit scared because what does this mean for me? Number one, I don't want to grow or change. That's one way, because you can look at it too where relationships, if they don't, not necessarily grow at the same time, but if you're not growing together in any way, it doesn't have to be in health and fitness, sometimes you can lose something there. So there's that growth part of it. There's the part of a physique changes and now you've got more confidence and you present yourself differently, and that can affect your spouse as well. But for me personally, again, everything for me now comes down to, because I had a client in a few 6 weeks ago who moved into my tribe who was having a really, really hard time around alcohol, because in any time that her and her husband went out to eat or celebrated anything, they would, maybe finish a bottle of wine. And she didn't want to be doing this anymore. She really didn't want to. She wanted to change it. So when she reached out to me and she gave me the whole story and she said, I don't know how to deal with this, my first initial instinct was, well, have you had the conversation with your husband? And she said, no. And she said, honestly, I never even thought of it. I just thought that he should know.
Yeah.
So if you haven't had the conversations, for me, that's the first step. And it might seem, like I said, like how I started this whole thing, because what we're trying to help you do, the question was, how do you overcome when spouses are not supportive?
Right.
Well, one of the steps, in my opinion, is being highly communicative with what you want.
Right.
What you're expecting, why you want it, is what I started it for. Because if you don't tell them, and that's anyway, if it was Kevin who was changing and he didn't tell me, well, how am I supposed to know? If I'm the one doing the changing and I don't tell Kevin, how is he supposed to know? So you have to be communicated. It has to be communicated. But secondly, and something I've had to learn the hard way, is that you can't change for anybody else. You have to change for yourself. And you can't expect anybody else to change for you. Your journey has to be entirely about you. And I don't necessarily mean that in a selfish way, although there's nothing wrong with being selfish when you're trying to improve your health either, because it does seep into everybody else's life anyway, and it makes your life more meaningful. But you have to let go of the fact that you feel like you need to change your husband, or you need somebody on board with you in order to, you need a partner, you want to change your partner, because if your partner was doing this, it would be easier for you. You have to accept that failures and struggles and all of those things are inevitable. They're part of the process. So learning how to show up for yourself, and that just means simply setting some small goals, showing up for them, regardless of what your partner, your spouse, your husband, whatever does or doesn't do. That is the initial thing that needs to be done, and it needs to be set up, and you need to have an affirmation that appeals to you, that certifies that this is what you're going to do. You need to have small, reasonable goals so that they don't feel so overwhelming. And it needs to be communicated to your spouse that, you know what, I don't want you bringing chocolate bars in the house. I love donuts, yes, but from now on, I'm only having them at these specific times. Or don't bring in a whole box. If you're going to my favorite store, pick out my favorite donut, bring it home for sure. Like something like that. But have those little tiny things that you almost feel are simple and don't need to be communicated, communicate them anyway.
Yeah, and I want to go back to what I was saying about like physique changes and things like that, because often the significant other might see that as you wanting to change how you look to try and impress somebody, or to be different, or what have you, because you're not happy with your current relationship, or you're not happy with the person that you're with. And I mean, those are triggers. So that's why you say, like you say, it's very, very important that you discuss what your goals are, why they're your goals. Like, why do you want to change your physique? Is it personal, just for yourself, or are there other driving factors or issues?
Yeah, and like
So
if you're
that
not
way, when
happy
it's
with yourself, telling them that is like
exactly
I don't feel confident when I do this. When we go out and I have to get dressed up, I feel horrible and I'd rather not go. So if
right,
I change these things, then I would feel better about those things.
right. So then that makes your partner more at ease with understanding why you're doing those changes, why you're making the changes. As well, I'm not trying to make myself look pretty so that so and so likes me, or so that I can find a new mate, or something like that, right? Because there can be those feelings
There can be actually.
when you're not involved or supported.
This is a perspective that I actually, for some reason, hadn't even considered. I hadn't. I hadn't even considered the fact that somebody. I mean, I can see it. It depends on the type of relationship and the type of the spouse and everything. But I hadn't come into this conversation going, oh yeah, we need to talk. Like in my own mind, I had some points that I knew I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
But this is a totally new perspective because I hadn't actually considered that when somebody changes their physique, whether it's a man or woman or whatever, I actually hadn't considered that the other person might think they're doing it to impress or to
right.
find somebody else or to impress somebody else. Right. I actually hadn't considered that.
Well, see, that like.
Did you think that about me?
No, not at all. Because I'm the best. I mean, you ain't getting any better than what you're sitting next to you right now. I can tell you that. But no, the reason why I brought that up is I was trying to think, like when you brought up this topic, how to make it more broader than just what you and I have gone through. Like because what you and I went through, it's not that I didn't really support you or anything like that. It's just that it was difficult to get on board with some of the stuff, or it was difficult to even just do some things because everything was so strict and what have you. And that was even after you'd competed, because you went through all the stuff with the metabolic damage and things like that. Your appetite had changed, your desires for food had changed, and all those things. So I was just trying to broaden the perspective as to perhaps
it's good. I'm not saying. I'm just saying I never thought
I
of that
realize
perspective.
But what I'm saying is that the reason I brought that up is to try and broaden the perspective as to why the significant other might not support.
No, and when you say it, I can get it. But I can honestly say it depends on your definition of support too, because I've never not felt supported with my decisions on things from Kevin. Like when I decided to compete, Kevin was never like completely against it. He saw me struggle with a bunch of stuff and probably was thinking, "Oh my God, why is she doing this to herself?" But he was never not supportive in my stuff. But I'm also very much the type of person that he will definitely support this, that when I get something in my head, I am doing it and seeing it to the end no matter what.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like head down, this is what I'm doing now, and this is what I have to do to get there, so that's all that matters. Kevin is not angry at me for doing it. He's not questioning why I'm doing it, even though in his own brain he might have been. But he the support, what I felt was support was there.
You mean for when you were going to compete?
Yeah.
Have you seen the women on stage when they compete? Ooh la la. So, win-win.
So.
Who wouldn't support that?
But I hadn't really thought about the fact, too, that, like, there are probably instances where I don't want to say your spouse might try and intentionally necessarily sabotage, although that can probably happen, too, but where they may unintentionally, like, subconsciously sabotage by the types of food they bring into the house and when they bring it in and those kind of things. Mm-hmm. So again, to me, that all goes back to make sure you're communicating with your husband.
Exactly.
Even like as far as Kevin, like what Kevin said, expressing why you want to change, because they probably see you and look at you as somebody who doesn't need to change. Why do you need to change? Like what different? Why? Well,
and that's just it, because perhaps that person has looked that way for several years, for numerous years. So why now? Like, why after all this time, right?
Yeah, and not even so much the physical change either, but like if you're establishing a lifestyle where suddenly you want to incorporate more movement in your life, it doesn't have to be about physique change.
No, but just the change in general.
Yeah.
Because now you're a person who's going in a completely different direction.
Now you're somebody who's completely changed your entire strategy for life, say.
Yeah.
Because now I really want to incorporate more movement because I really want to be healthier. And there's not really I didn't go to the doctor and get bad news. I just want to do this for me. Or I want to start eating more vegetables or more fruit or more chicken or more, whatever. And all of a sudden your spouse is caught off guard because they're like, well, why now? Because we didn't do this all this time.
Right.
I'm not saying it can't be about physique change. Most of the time, it is about physique change. You want to change your outer appearance because you want to feel better in your skin or whatever the case might be. But there are other examples where maybe you don't want to change necessarily your outer appearance, but you want to be healthier.
Right. That was our case because realistically, I really didn't. I've never had a desire to be, Mr. Muscle or Mr. Fitness or whatever. But I mean, getting on in years, not old yet, but getting there. And what you talked to me about as far as getting me involved in being in this journey is, well, as you're getting older, you need to protect your joints, your muscles, and stuff like that. You need, prevent prevent fat loss. Here we go, was. You need to prevent muscle loss and things like that as you get older, so that you can stay active and be healthy and enjoy the things that you want to do later on in life. So now that I'm coming of age, I pay more attention to things.
That's
like
true, yeah.
Right.
The other thing is that I think if you take on the mindset, and I don't know that I've always had this like thought process through my head that, well, if I do these things and I work to get healthy, it's going to influence the other people in my life. I don't know that I've always had that thought process, but I know that that's kind of how it has evolved. So, like, as I've gone through my own processes, Kevin comes on board with like making better choices for food. That's kind of since we trained together with the trainer in the gym, we both started to gradually improve our nutritional choices. And then when I left Suncor and got more educated in things, we made more changes again. And then when you left Sterling last year, year before, you really came on board with incorporating more movement and incorporating, getting back into those things. So I feel like if you have the mindset that instead of going, oh, why don't they want to support me or why don't they want to change too, and look at it as, I'm going to go through my journey. I'm going to show up for myself. I'm going to change myself. I'm going to become a better version of me, yada, yada, yada. I'm going to instill my newer set of values into these individuals who live with me or who are part of my life, whether they're your kids or whether they're your spouse or whether they're your parents or whatever. And over time, I think that I will influence them to make better choices because they'll see me as a happier person. They'll see me as a healthier person. They'll see me be able to, go up and down the stairs without being winded, or to run around with the kids and not be winded, or to enjoy, you know what I mean? Or to go to the store and try on clothes and notice that now I'm not, going, oh, I can't fit into that, yada, yada, yada. I'm feeling bad about myself, but now I actually feel really good about myself. And all those things can influence the people in my life. I think if you take on that approach, along with the approach of communication and along with the approach of understanding that you can't change somebody else, you only have control of yourself.
Right.
Those three things alone can do a ton of,
can
provide a ton of value
and I think
to your journey.
Like you opened with, you can't let yourself get discouraged from going through your journey because you don't have the support.
No, because ultimately your journey has to be about you. Yes. You can't be doing it for anybody else. You can't be doing it to change what people think of you or how they're going to look at you. It cannot be about anything external of you. It has to be about the internal of why you want to do it. It has to be a deep why. It has
to be for yourself. That's just it. Like,
it has to be for yourself and about yourself.
In one respect, it is a very selfish journey.
It's an extremely selfish journey, but it's a selfish journey in that when you say it, it has to be about me. This is all about me. But my mentor always says, health and fitness. You can look at health and fitness as a very selfish journey, or you can look at the fact that you're bettering yourself for the people in your life. You're bettering yourself to be around longer term for your kids.
Exactly.
You're bettering yourself to help your husband make healthier choices down the road. You're bettering yourself to influence your parents and the choices they make. You're bettering yourself to improve your self-confidence for when you and your spouse go out on a date night, or when you and your spouse are...
Yeah, but just bettering yourself for health in general, so that, if you have a history of certain illnesses or diseases in your family, that may be triggered,
that's what I mean.
May be triggered by, being a larger person or by the type of foods that you eat, then, it's very significant. as to
Yeah,
why
and
you need to make that change.
so just because it sounds selfish to say I'm doing this for me and it's not about you or whatever you want to, however you want to say it, or even not even say it out loud, but however you say it in your head, that doesn't make you a selfish person. It means that you're prioritizing something that's really important, that's going to allow you to live a longer, more fulfilling life, technically speaking.
Exactly.
It's about longevity and all of those things, not just I want to change my outer appearance.
Right. Because that's in some ways that's usually half the reason why you want to change your appearance. And I mean, the other half really realistically should be about being better physically. So it's not so hard to go up and down the stairs. So you actually take the stairs instead of the elevator, or that you physically can, like if you got to park halfway across the parking lot when you go get your groceries, that you can walk back, things like that, right?
It's extremely important to understand that your why has to be deep enough to keep you going. Your why can't just be I need to lose 10 pounds or I need to lose 25 pounds or I need to lose 50 pounds, because at some point in time, you will never keep going if that is your only why.
Yeah.
Your why is deep. It's deeper probably even than a lot of people want to lean into, because it can be extremely scary.
Right.
Like to say that you want a better life because you have a long-term vision of whatever that is. Like if you use me and Kevin as an example, my longer-term vision always was, for a long time, and I never spoke it out loud, that we would be living on a beach or living in a warmer place for, the winter at least. And I never spoke it out loud, and it was scary. And that was my deep why. That was my deep why for doing the things that I did, the mentorships I created, or the mentorships I joined, being mentored, yada, yada, working all the hours, yada, yada. So if you don't have a deep, meaningful why for a vision, whether you speak it out loud or not, and you don't know what that why is, you need to dig into that why, because if not, every single time your spouse doesn't support you, you will feel like you need to quit, or you will quit.
Yeah.
Every single time you don't lose a pound or two per week, you will feel like you want to quit, or you will quit. There needs to be something deeper than just, I want to lose 10 pounds or whatever.
Right, because in some cases, for some people, depending how far gone they are, being unhealthy is more expensive than the journey to be healthy. Being unhealthy, being ill, like if you need to buy, a scooter to get you around because you physically can't walk anymore because you've neglected your health.
Well, and Julie makes a good point here when she said, I think everybody in my family would agree that my journey is not a selfish one, because I am in a much better mood than I was 6 weeks ago, and they are definitely reaping the benefits. So when you have more energy, when you feel better about yourself, when you have more confidence, when you, even something as simple and as materialistic as going up and getting dressed and leaving the bedroom feeling good about yourself, all of that seeps into your family, your spouse, your everything. Yeah. Because the people in your life will feel that energy. They will. They absolutely will, as opposed to what you were like before, when you were miserable, when you were feeling shitty in your clothes, when you didn't feel great about yourself, when you didn't have any energy. Think about how kids react when they really want you to play with them and you're really tired and you really don't want to. But yet when you have all this energy and you want to, they have a totally different kind of persona. Kids feel those things. So kids, your spouse, all of it. And then Mindy makes a good point. She said, yes, it's what you said. That's what I'm afraid of, is if I change too much and he doesn't, where will we have the common ground? Yeah. And this is something you and I have discussed on numerous occasions through, because remember you mentioned to me one time that you kind of had a little bit of a fear because I was reading all these personal development books, and you were concerned that I was growing and you weren't.
Yeah, I felt like I was getting left behind.
Yeah, and that's the word. Yeah. You felt like you were getting left behind.
And my exact words were, you're starting to outgrow me.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. You were starting to outgrow me. And honestly, again, I think that goes back to communication. So I'm going to be honest. When Kevin and I got together, my communication as a relationship was terrible. And Kevin has, maybe with some of the courses I've done too, but you've really brought it out in me that like communication is key. We need to be open with each other. We need to say everything. And so when Kevin said, I feel like you're outgrowing me, we had a solid conversation around that. So I think, Mindy, that if you're concerned about that,
it was a serious fear. It got to the point where it was a legit serious fear because I outgrew my previous spouse.
Right. So yeah, and I think it was for us, it was a legit concern because we had both done that. Yeah. I had outgrown mine previous, you had outgrown your previous, and now here I was growing as an individual, and you felt like you were being left behind. Yeah. And it was probably because of the past that you felt that way. But again, the communication there. Yeah. So like for me, and Mindy says this too, communication, good point. I need to communicate what my goals are beyond food and exercise to age with as much functionality as I can. Yeah. And then you can even bring up your concern about what you said there, where will the common ground be if I grow and you don't, yada, yada, and get his perspective about that too.
Well, and that's where we were.
That's exactly where we were.
Yeah, when this business really started to take off, and you had all these mentors and things like that, and you were just going, and I wasn't getting on board. Not necessarily that I wasn't getting on board, I just didn't know where I fit.
Right.
So it become very challenging. So when you say, well, now I don't know where I fit, and if you've changed yourself mentally and physically to be a better person through diet and exercise, and your significant other hasn't, you need to let them know that it's through no fault of theirs that you've done this.
Right.
Unless, of course, it is. But.
Right. And that's a good. It's
because
good.
Realistically, you were growing because you were driven to grow.
Right.
I was working where I really didn't care what I did.
No, but I was in that position too when I worked for Suncor. I mean, you get down this hole and then you really don't care about anything, and nothing appeals to you because you're not really living your life at that point. Yeah. It's living for you. So then when you get in a position where you're driven to grow because now you're so passionate about what you're doing or whatever, and you're driven to grow and you have these huge visions, you can see, that's what I was saying before, like when I get something in my head, it's like head down and I'm just going forward, and I didn't realize that Kevin felt like I was outgrowing him. So those are good conversations, solid conversations to have, even if they don't go that far right away, because that was only a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. 2, 3, maybe 4 years ago. 2020. So those things maybe can be had along the journey, or you can have them right away. But I do think that, kind of giving your spouse an ability to express themselves too as to why they're not ready or why they don't want to, but also then allowing yourself the opportunity to say, hey, this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it, and this is my deep, meaningful overall why or vision, right. So that you're both kind of have that communication, and then and then you can set your expectations of what you when it comes to like food and stuff like that, about what you want them to do or don't want them to do, and what you appreciate.
And one of the other common things that may happen is when the other spouse, is not interested in that, or has gone too far down the rabbit hole. They think, well, I'm either too big or too old or too lazy or too unfit to exercise. I've gone beyond help. Then when they see you make the change, there's a good chance that they'll sabotage you. They'll say things they don't necessarily mean to. It's like maybe an unconscious sabotage that is, deterring you from doing certain things. They may become closed off. They might not even say anything. You're on your journey, and they may feel they're no longer a part of you and become closed off. So that's why, like you said in the very beginning, as you're going through the journey, explain it. Explain to them why you're going through the journey. As you're going, if you see that there's a distance between you and your spouse, then you've got to ask the questions. Why is that distance there? Is it because of what I'm doing, or is there something else?
Right, and I think that it's important to also, understand where your priorities truly lie. Because if you have, let's just say you and your husband do a date night every week. Well, that doesn't mean every single date night has to be around food, but majority of the time it's around food. You're going out to eat or something. So if you're going out to eat, you don't necessarily need to change that to be able to still have a healthy, fulfilling lifestyle and even achieve fat loss. Like you can still do those things. If you're doing them every single night, it might not be as you might not be able to do that and achieve fat loss, but you can find a balance that works for both of you where you're not kind of putting your relationship to the wayside just because these are your goals now.
Right.
And that might take some time to find that balance.
And there are some compromises that even like that you could do going through your journey that you can help with the spouse that doesn't really want to. So one of the things that you ended up doing when we went out for date nights or whatever to restaurants is finding out if you could have a rice bowl with no sauce.
Right.
I could have the pasta, I could have the pizza, I could have the burger, I could have the steak, I could have whatever was on the menu. It didn't really matter. As long as you could have, and I mean, 9 times out of 10, I'd have the big freaking pasta looking over at what you're eating and go, oh, geez, I wish I would have had that.
It's true. Every single time I order something that's like not necessarily written on the menu, but I ask for specifics, and this is, since we're talking about it, it's not really part of the topic, but don't be afraid ever to go to a restaurant, and if something's not written on the menu, ask for it anyway. So, for instance,
I think it's part of the topic.
Usually when we go out, I'm not very adventurous with food. And I'm not that way, one, because I'm just not adventurous with food, but secondly, because I have IBS, so there are a lot of things sometimes that really aggravate my belly. So generally when we go out to eat, I tend to stick to the things I know don't affect me or don't affect me much. So when I go to a restaurant and say there's a rice bowl and it says like teriyaki rice bowl or something, I will specifically ask, can I have this rice bowl with no sauce, just rice, vegetables, and chicken? Mm-hmm. Or something like that. That's just one example. But we've also eaten at a restaurant, a pasta restaurant, where there was literally, because we walked in, and I don't eat pasta because pasta really aggravates my belly. I haven't eaten pasta in years. And I know Kevin loves it. So we walked into this restaurant once, and there was literally nothing on the menu that I could order that didn't have pasta. And so when the lady came over, I said, can I just get like a grilled chicken breast with vegetables, or grilled chicken breast, vegetables, and rice, or something along those, or even like grilled steak or something, vegetables and rice. And she was like, oh yeah, it's not on the menu, but we can totally do that. So don't ever be afraid to go out. Like these are some small, simple compromises where you're still getting a date night or you're still going out together. And the other good one is, Kevin and I do this often now too, and it's not something that we necessarily used to do, but I think as the lifestyle has kind of embedded itself into both our lives, when we go out for a date night in the summer, we will include a walk in the date night. So we might go down and walk around the sty or something like that, and you're including then movement in your date night as opposed to, going to a restaurant and then to a movie to sit for an hour. And don't get me wrong, we've done that too, but sometimes in the summertime specifically, it's nice to be outside. Right,
because if you look at the menu, if you look under sides, rice is a side, vegetables is a side.
I mean, you can
and
almost
chicken breast,
always,
depending on what they have, like specifically with pastas, you can have a choice of either chicken, diced chicken, or beef, or ground beef or whatever. But you can also get salads with diced steak on them. Right.
I mean,
so if you just look at that, there are ways that you can go out and, because this is what happened to us in the beginning. This is why I keep throwing it back and saying that it is relevant to this conversation, because when you were competing, you didn't feel like we could go out for a date night because you would never get anything.
No, but I was in a totally different place when I competed.
Right.
I mean, I wasn't living a lifestyle like I am now. I was on a diet to compete, basically. And I was in a very much of an all or nothing mentality. This is what they told me I have to do. This is what I have to eat. So this is what I'm
eating.
Chicken, rice, and water. And I'm not doing anything else. Whereas I'm in a totally different place now. But I guess this is part of the topic. You're right, and it is a good topic to have, because sometimes we often think about things in it's all in or all out, but there's a gray area too, and you have to work through the gray area, or you have to work through the black and white areas to get to the gray area where there's a comfortable balance held for both you and your spouse, where your spouse feels comfortable enough to go out and have a big plate of pasta, and you, because you're on a different journey or going a different way, or pasta affects your belly or whatever the case might be, you decide against the pasta because it's not what you want in the moment or whatever, and you go a different route, but that doesn't mean you still can't enjoy your time with your spouse.
Exactly.
Or maybe you and your spouse have always gone out and both had an alcoholic drink and both had your own appies and both had your own meal and both had your own dessert. I mean, Kevin and I, minus the dessert, because I don't think we did that often, but everything else we used to always do. And now when we go out, we don't always have an alcoholic drink, but most times we have a glass of wine. But we share an appy.
Yep.
We have a meal ourselves, and we very rarely, if ever, have a dessert. And if we do, it's also shared.
Yeah.
So there's little things that you can do where it doesn't make everything seem such a drastic change on either you or your spouse.
Right. And I think that's as a kicker, as a final thought. That's the other thing too. Don't make your changes so drastic.
Yes, take them in small increments and be okay failing forward. Be okay understanding that this is not all going to go perfect, but there is a balance that can be found that works for everybody involved. Mm-hmm. And as you go through the process, you do have and will have the ability to influence the other people in your life in a good way, in a positive way. Yeah. You do have the ability you're not being selfish by prioritizing yourself and by prioritizing your health, because in turn, this will greatly benefit everybody in your life because you're going to be happier, you're going to feel better, etc. Yeah. And again, just to reiterate, those are some of the points we already talked about. But to reiterate, the other one is, again, communication is a big key.
Yeah.
For everything. Mindy said you were very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. That's it, I think.
Yeah, we've covered it. I really don't know if you have any further questions or whatever, or if there's something specific to this topic that we didn't answer or didn't cover. Send us an email or what have you, or chat us up in the group, and we'll see if we can't provide an answer for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not always easy to navigate, but then most things that are worth getting through are not always easily navigated through. There's trudging through the quicksand to get to the other side kind of thing.
Right. Because like that's what I was saying with it, like when you're first starting your journey, you're extremely focused on the journey. Right?
Yeah.
So, and because you're extremely focused on the journey, you're focused on what you have to do, when you have to do it, and all those things. And sometimes that can detract from other aspects of your life. So I think what you were trying to say is learn how to incorporate other aspects of your life with your journey.
And that's honestly what I aim to teach. Now that I've had to learn the hard way through all of these things, trudging through the quicksand, my goal when I coach clients is to help them not have to be in the quicksand for so long. You will still end up in the quicksand because you always have to learn learn some of the hard things yourself. Yeah. You still have to fail forward, and all of us fail forward. But my goal is to help you trudge along with less time in the quicksand, because I can help you navigate it, or we can help you navigate it in ways where, we've already learned these lessons. So if we take it this way, you don't have to struggle for this long through this. Right? The tips and the tricks and the coaching and, even something as simple as asking a client, well, have you communicated this to your husband? Makes a world of difference. Yeah. So some simple things. I hope it helped. And I think that's it for today. I don't know what we're going to talk about next week, but we will figure it out. I did have a couple other people comment. I can't remember what they were now, but
we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out, yeah. Anyway, I appreciate you joining on, and I hope that helped with your question, Mindy. And if you have anything else, anybody, off of this topic, please don't hesitate to comment in the group or send me a message privately. And we'll see you. Oh, go ahead, Julie. We'll wait. Oh, you'll send it to me. Okay. No worries. So we will see you next week. Same time, same place.
Yes.
All right. Have a good week, guys. Bye.